Hello everyone. We all have heard about diabetes. There'll be someone in our family or the loved ones or near and dear ones who might be suffering from a disease called diabetes. But today we are going to tell you something which nobody would have told you as of now. Point number one. Point number two, we really wish that each diabetic doctor would have told you this. So there are various types of diabetes. First is type 1 diabetes, which is generally diabetes which happens with children. In that case, our pancreas is not making insulin, correct? So it is a defect. So by birth, pancreas is not making insulin. So a lot of people who are suffering from type 1 diabetes, which is around 5-7% of the population, have to take insulin injection because the body is not making insulin, which is a hormone. Second is type 2 diabetes. Type 2 diabetes is also called adult onset diabetes, which is 90% of the case. So people who have diabetes 25, 30, 35, 40 as they go ahead in life is called type 2 diabetes, which is the majority of the case. And third is gestational diabetes. So when a lot of pregnant women have diabetes, so that is called gestational diabetes, which happens because of a lot of hormonal imbalance during pregnancy. First and foremost information that we need to have is what is insulin. So insulin is a hormone in our body which is released by the pancreas. So whenever we eat something, we eat an apple, we eat broccoli, we eat pizza, we eat burger, glucose in our body goes up. In response to that high glucose, pancreas releases insulin. As simple as that. Now that insulin helps glucose enter the cell, and then you measure your sugar, you're normal. So this is a normal process which happens in everyone's body. The real cause of type 2 diabetes is insulin resistance. And I want all of you to be very clear on this. It's not that we are not making insulin, it's not that we are eating too much glucose, but the only cause proven of type 2 diabetes, which you were never told about, is insulin resistance. We need to treat insulin resistance, right? So diabetes is not a problem of high sugar. High sugar is the end result of diabetes, but the root cause is insulin resistance. But unfortunately, all of us are focusing on bringing sugar down and not focusing on insulin resistance. So it is like this: I have an infection in my leg. Because of that, I have high fever. That infection in the leg is insulin resistance, and that high fever is high sugar. So we are taking medicine for that fever, and we think that fever is controlled, fever is fine, I don't have that fever now. But that leg infection is going from bad to worse every single day. Exactly the same thing is happening with people who are diabetic. They take medicine for controlling sugar, bringing sugar down, but they do not treat the underlying cause of the disease, which is insulin resistance. And when this happens for 15, 20, 25 years, they have heart complications, kidney issues, liver complications. Why? Because they never addressed insulin resistance, which was the root cause of type 2 diabetes. Now, what is insulin resistance and how do we treat that? So let's go back to what we were discussing. Whenever we eat something, glucose in the blood goes up. In response to that, pancreas releases insulin. Now, we have trillions of cells in our body. Each cell have receptors. Now let us understand what is insulin resistance. As we discussed, whenever we eat food, glucose in the blood goes up. In response to that, pancreas releases insulin. Now we have trillions of cells in our body. Each cell have something called receptors. So all hormones have receptors in each cell. So insulin is a hormone, so we have insulin receptor. Thyroid is a hormone, so we have thyroid receptors. So each hormone have an equivalent receptor on each cell. So when glucose goes up, insulin is released from the pancreas. That insulin goes and binds with the receptor. When insulin binds with insulin receptor, glucose enters the cell. This is a normal process which happens in all human beings. Now, in case of pre-diabetes and diabetes, this insulin receptor, which is, think of that as a door. So that insulin receptor started becoming like this, right? Because of your diet, your lifestyle. So, which means that each cell is becoming resistant to insulin. So when insulin goes and binds with the receptor, that receptor is not sensitive to insulin, right? So we need more insulin to bind with the receptor. When we need more insulin to bind with the receptor, your pancreas are squeezed to make more insulin. So that, initially if we needed one insulin, okay, to bind with the insulin receptor, maybe today now we need 3 insulins, right? When this happens for years and that insulin receptor becomes less and less sensitive, becomes more and more resistant to insulin, then we develop type 2 diabetes, correct? In this entire process, the focus should always be on treating insulin resistance, which is the root cause of type 2 diabetes. But what is happening now? We are given drugs, right, which helps squeeze pancreas make more insulin. So that extra insulin which is released goes and binds with insulin receptor and glucose can enter the cell, which is fine, which means that you test, your glucose is okay, but nobody is treating that insulin resistance. And when this happens for 10, 15, 20 years, one day your pancreas will tell you that now I cannot make enough insulin. So your doctors will then give you insulin injection because you need insulin to bind with insulin receptor so that glucose can go down. And this is what is a normal practice which happens, focusing on bringing sugar level down and not focusing on treating the cause of the disease, which is insulin resistance. The good news is that fortunately now with science we know a lot of foods which can treat insulin resistance, which can open this door back, which means you don't need as many insulin as hormone as you needed earlier. So we have a lot of people who come to us who are on 40 units of insulin injection, 60 units of insulin injection. 2, 3, 4 months, once they start eating good, they become more insulin sensitive. The insulin requirement drops. So earlier they were 64 units of insulin injection, today they take 8 units of insulin. Or maybe a lot of people are fortunate enough to stop insulin injection provided that pancreas are still functioning, making insulin, right? So what I'm trying to focus here is that type 2 diabetes is absolutely preventable, reversible and treatable disease if we focus on the cause of the disease, which is insulin resistance. And science and data are amply available, right? You can look up to science and we now know that diabetes should not even exist, especially type 2 diabetes, which is a reversible disease. Again, I'm highlighting the fact that if you wish and if you have to take medicine, 1 medicine, 2 medicine is fine. But the focus and the priority should always be on treating the cause of the disease. We all know now that obesity, which is being overweight, and diabetes have a very strong connection. We also know that diabetes and fatty liver has a very strong connection because whatever we put in our mouth first goes to the liver and then goes ahead, right? So every time we have that cornflakes, which is nothing but sugar, right? A bowl of cornflakes has 9 tablespoons of sugar. So every time we have that for years, we are obviously, inviting disease. We are obviously inviting pre-diabetes. We are obviously inviting diabetes. And that is why I keep telling people that with respect to lifestyle disease, education is much more important than medication. Because once you're empowered with the right information, you will treat the cause of the disease and not just suppress the symptom of the disease, right? Having spoken of what is the root cause of type 2 diabetes, which is insulin resistance, that is what we need to focus on. We also know that no doctor talks to us about insulin resistance. So we go to a doctor's chamber, he sees the report, he sees the number, he just prescribes pills. In 5 minutes, we are outside his chamber. That's okay, you take pills, but you need to know that lifestyle disease is not about deficiency of a drug. It is about hormonal imbalance, which we need to treat. So knowing the right thing is very, very important. Again, I'm saying no one is wrong. No one has ill intention to make you sick. It is time that we take personal responsibilities, that we need to empower ourselves and ensure that we can reverse our lifestyle diseases. And lifestyle diseases can only be reversed with lifestyle interventions, not just by popping pills and drugs.